Have you ever brought home a new pet only to discover a secret hidden in plain sight? That's exactly what happened to the Thompson family when they adopted a mysterious dog named Shadow. What started as a chance encounter at a shelter turned into a story of bravery, danger, and redemption. Why did the vet call the cops after seeing Shadow, and how did this seemingly ordinary dog become a hero? Stay with us to uncover the truth behind Shadow's remarkable journey. The Thompson home, once filled with the joyful barks and playful footsteps of Max, their beloved golden retriever, now felt eerily silent. Max had been a part of their lives for over a decade, a loyal companion through ups and downs. His passing left an undeniable void, one that lingered in every corner of their home. Yet despite the emptiness, the family wasn't ready to open their hearts to another dog. The memories of Max were still too raw, and the thought of another companion felt like an impossible replacement. It was on a cold Saturday morning when Lily, their 12-year-old daughter, brought up the idea. "Can we just go look?" she asked, her hazel eyes hopeful as she tugged at her father's sleeve. "We don't have to bring one home. I just miss Max." Her voice faltered at the end and her parents exchanged a glance. "Just to look," Mr. Thompson said reluctantly, adjusting his coat. Mrs. Thompson nodded, though her expression was uncertain. Lily's excitement was contagious, and for the first time in weeks, there was a spark of life in her demeanor. The local animal shelter was modest, tucked away at the edge of town. The air was filled with a mix of barks, meows, and the faint scent of antiseptic. Rows of kennels lined the walls, each housing animals with hopeful or tired eyes. As the family walked through, Lily paused at every enclosure, murmuring soft greetings to the dogs. None seemed to truly catch her attention until they reached the last row. There, sitting quietly in a corner, was a dog, unlike any they had ever seen. His sleek, black skin glistened under the fluorescent lights, his body lean and muscular. But it was his eyes that captured them, piercing amber, filled with an intensity that seemed almost human. The placard on his kennel read, "Shadow Zoloitzquintli, estimated age 3 years. "Mum, Dad, look at him!" Lily's voice was a mix of awe and excitement. She knelt down to meet Shadow's gaze, her small hand resting on the cold metal of the kennel door. Shadow didn't bark or wag his tail. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying her with an expression that seemed far too wise for a dog. The shelter volunteer approached, her smile kind but hesitant. "That's Shadow. He's a bit different from the others. Very quiet, very watchful. Some families find him a little intimidating." "Why is he here?" Lily asked, her eyes never leaving Shadow's. The volunteer hesitated. "He was found wandering alone. No tags, no microchip. He's been here for about 3 months now. He's very calm, very intelligent, but he doesn't trust easily. He takes time." Mr. Thompson crossed his arms, his expression skeptical. "We're just looking," he reminded Lily, though his tone softened as he watched her interact with the dog. Shadow stepped closer to the front of the kennel, his movements deliberate and cautious. When Lily reached her hand through the bars, Shadow sniffed it before pressing his nose against her palm, a gesture so gentle it caught them all off guard. "It's like he chose her," Mrs. Thompson murmured, her voice tinged with surprise. "Please," Lily whispered, her eyes pleading now. "I know he's the one." The weight of the moment settled over them. Mr. Thompson sighed, running a hand through his hair. "We'll talk about it," he said, but even he could feel his resolve weakening. By the time they left the shelter, Shadow was in the back seat of their car, lying silently on the blanket Lily had brought. She sat beside him, her hand resting on his sleek body, occasionally stroking him. Shadow didn't flinch, but remained still, his eyes scanning the world outside the window, as if trying to make sense of this new chapter in his life. Mrs. Thompson glanced back at them, her lips curving into a faint smile. "He's so quiet," she remarked. "It's like he's trying to figure us out." Maybe he is, Mr. Thompson replied. But I'm still not sure this was the right choice. Lily turned to her father, her voice soft but firm. It is. I can feel it. Shadow belongs with us. That first night at home, Shadow's cautious nature became even more apparent. He didn't explore the house like most dogs would. Instead, he stayed close to Lily, following her movements, but maintaining a respectful distance. When she sat down to read on the couch, he curled up a few feet away, his amber eyes watching her intently. Lily's parents observed this dynamic with a mix of curiosity and concern. He's so different, Mrs. Thompson said as she sipped her tea. Not like Max at all. Maybe that's a good thing, Mr. Thompson replied. We didn't need another Max. Maybe Shadow is exactly who we need right now. Lily spent hours with Shadow that weekend, talking to him in hushed tones as if sharing her secrets. I miss Max too, she confessed one evening, her voice barely audible. But I think you understand that, don't you? Shadow's ears twitched at her words, and for a brief moment he inched closer, resting his head near her feet. It was a small gesture, but to Lily it felt like a promise. As the days passed, Shadow began to show glimpses of his personality. He was incredibly observant, his eyes always darting to the smallest movements or sounds. He didn't bark, not even once, but his presence was commanding. It was as if he was silently guarding the family, ensuring their safety in a way they didn't fully understand yet. That night, as the family settled into their respective routines, Shadow lay by the window, his amber eyes reflecting the moonlight. Lily watched him from her bed, her heart swelling with a mix of gratitude and curiosity. Who was this mysterious dog? What had he been through? She didn't have the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Shadow was home, and somehow he had already begun to heal the void Max had left behind. Little did they know, Shadow's quiet demeanor and mysterious past would soon unravel a story far greater than they could have imagined. It didn't take long for Shadow's peculiar habits to become evident. From the moment he arrived, he gravitated toward Lily, as if he had chosen her as his anchor. He followed her everywhere, into the kitchen, to the living room, and even waited outside her bedroom door at night. While most dogs might have wagged their tails or sought constant attention, Shadow was different. He moved with a quiet intensity, always observing, always vigilant. At first, the Thompson family found his behavior endearing. It's like he's her shadow, Mrs. Thompson joked one afternoon, watching Shadow sit quietly at Lily's feet while she worked on a puzzle. But the more time passed, the more they noticed how deliberate his actions were. Shadow didn't simply follow. He seemed to stand guard, his amber eyes scanning the environment as though anticipating a threat. One evening, Lily sat at her desk in the family study, her math homework spread out before her. The room was quiet except for the occasional creak of the old wooden floorboards. Shadow lay a few feet away, his sleek body stretched out on the rug, his head resting on his paws. Suddenly, Shadow's ears perked up, his muscles tensing. He lifted his head, his gaze fixed on the window behind Lily. Before she could even turn to see what had caught his attention, Shadow leaped up, positioning himself between Lily and the window. A low, guttural growl escaped his throat, deep and menacing. "Shadow!" Lily's voice trembled as she froze in her seat. She followed his gaze to the window, but all she could see was the dark expanse of their backyard. The curtains swayed gently, but there was no sign of movement outside. Her parents rushed into the room, alerted by the growling. "What's going on?" Mr. Thompson asked, his eyes darting between Lily and the window. "I don't know," Lily stammered. "Shadow just started growling at the window." Mr. Thompson cautiously approached and pulled the curtains aside, revealing nothing but the moonlit yard. "There's nothing there," he said, though his voice carried a note of unease. Shadow didn't relax. He stayed rooted to his spot, his body taut like a coiled spring. It wasn't until Lily gently placed a hand on his back and whispered, "It's okay, Shadow." that he finally eased down, though his eyes remained fixed on the window. Over the next few days, the family couldn't shake the incident from their minds. Shadow's hyper-awareness seemed to heighten, and his behavior grew more peculiar. He would pace near the windows at night, his ears twitching at the faintest noise. Even during the day, he often positioned himself by the front door as though standing guard. "Do you think he's protecting us?" Mrs. Thompson asked one evening as she watched Shadow sit near the living room window, his gaze fixed on the driveway. "Maybe," Mr. Thompson replied. "But from what? There's nothing out there." That answer came one night, just past midnight, when the family was jolted awake by the sound of ferocious barking. Shadow's voice, so rarely heard before, now echoed through the house with an urgency that made their hearts race. "Shadow!" Lily called as she scrambled out of bed. By the time she reached the living room, Shadow was already at the front window, his teeth bared and his body rigid. His barking was relentless, each sound sharp and filled with warning. Mr. Thompson was the first to spot it, a figure moving outside, trying to pry open one of the side windows. "Stay back," he ordered, as he grabbed a flashlight and hurried toward the door. Before anyone could stop him, Shadow lunged toward the window, his powerful body slamming against it. The sudden force startled the intruder, who stumbled back in shock. The man fumbled with his tools, clearly not expecting a dog of Shadow's caliber to be on the other side of the glass. Mr. Thompson swung the front door open, the beam of his flashlight catching the man's face just as he bolted into the night. Shadow barked furiously, his body pressed against the doorframe as if daring the intruder to come back. The house fell silent once the man disappeared into the darkness. Shadow's barking ceased, but his stance remained protective. He stood tall, his chest heaving, his eyes scanning the yard for any lingering threats. The family gathered in the living room, still shaken by the incident. "If it weren't for Shadow," Mrs. Thompson began, her voice trailing off. "He scared him off," Mr. Thompson said, his tone both impressed and bewildered. He crouched down to pet Shadow, who now sat calmly beside Lily. "Good boy," he murmured, running a hand over Shadow's sleek head. Shadow leaned into his touch briefly before resuming his watchful posture. Lily knelt beside Shadow, wrapping her arms around him. "You're our hero," she whispered, her voice filled with gratitude. Shadow didn't move, but his eyes softened as he looked at her. The incident left the family with more questions than answers. Who was the intruder? And more importantly, why had Shadow reacted so quickly, so decisively? It wasn't just instinct. It felt calculated, as though Shadow had encountered danger like this before. "He's different," Mrs. Thompson said the next morning as they sat around the breakfast table. "Not like any dog we've ever had." Mr. Thompson nodded. "He's smart. Too smart. It's like he's seen this kind of thing before." Lily, stroking Shadow's back as he lay by her feet, looked up. "Do you think he's been trained for something? Like maybe he was someone's guard dog before?" "It's possible," Mr. Thompson admitted, "but it doesn't explain everything. There's more to him than we know." That day, the family couldn't help but watch Shadow more closely. His movements, his expressions, the way his ears twitched at every sound, it all felt deliberate, purposeful. Shadow wasn't just a dog. He was a mystery waiting to be unraveled. For Lily, the realization only deepened her bond with him. She felt a strange connection to Shadow, as though they shared an unspoken understanding. Whatever his past had been, she was determined to make his future one filled with love and safety. Little did they know, Shadow's actions that night were just the beginning. The secrets he carried and the courage he would soon show would change their lives forever. The Thompson family had grown accustomed to Shadow's peculiarities, his watchful nature, and his almost uncanny intelligence. But as the weeks passed, they began to wonder if his quiet demeanor and hyper-awareness were the result of something deeper. It was during a routine checkup at the vet that their suspicions took a dark turn. The veterinary clinic was small but bustling with activity. The sterile smell of antiseptic hung in the air, and the faint sounds of barking and meowing filtered through from the back rooms. Shadow sat silently on the examination table, his sleek black body still as a statue. His amber eyes, sharp and alert, flicked toward every noise, every movement in the room. "He's so calm," Dr. Patterson, the family's longtime veterinarian, remarked as he approached with his clipboard. "Most dogs get a little anxious in here." "Shadow's different," Lily said proudly, her hand resting on Shadow's back. "He's always watching everything, like he knows something we don't." Dr. Patterson chuckled softly. "Well, let's see what we can learn about him today." He began his examination, checking Shadow's ears, teeth, and paws. Everything seemed normal until he gently ran his hands along Shadow's sleek abdomen. The vet froze. "What's wrong?" Mrs. Thompson asked, noticing the sudden change in his expression. Dr. Patterson didn't answer immediately. Instead, he leaned closer, narrowing his eyes at a faint mark, barely visible on Shadow's skin. It was a sequence of numbers and letters, etched so subtly that it almost blended with his natural pigmentation. "What is it?" Mr. Thompson pressed, his voice tinged with concern. "It's a marking," the vet said carefully, straightening up. His cheerful demeanor was gone, replaced by a tense seriousness. "I need to step out for a moment. Please wait here." The family exchanged uneasy glances as Dr. Patterson left the room. Shadow remained still, his body relaxed but his eyes tracking the door the vet had exited through. Minutes felt like hours as they waited. When Dr. Patterson finally returned, his expression was grim, and he wasn't alone. 2 police officers entered the room behind him, their presence immediately filling the small space with a sense of unease. "What's going on?" Mr. Thompson demanded, stepping protectively closer to Lily and Shadow. One of the officers, a tall man with a steely gaze, spoke. "We were informed of a potential case involving illegal activity. The marking on your dog is a known identifier used by a network of animal smugglers." "Smugglers?" Mrs. Thompson echoed, her face pale. The officer nodded. "This particular network is notorious for capturing and trafficking rare animals. They often use dogs like Shadow, intelligent, strong breeds, for dangerous tasks, including smuggling contraband or assisting in illegal operations." Lily's hand tightened on Shadow's back. "That can't be true," she whispered. He's a good dog." "No one's saying he isn't," the officer said gently. "But the fact that he has this marking means he was likely part of their system at some point. Dogs like him don't just end up in shelters by accident." The room felt heavy with silence as the weight of the revelation settled over the family. Shadow, oblivious to the conversation, looked up at Lily, his amber eyes calm but unwavering. "What happens now?" Mr. Thompson finally asked, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We need to investigate further," the officer replied. "This marking might lead us to the people responsible. For now, we'll need to take some photographs and gather more information about when and where you adopted him." "You're not taking him," Lily blurted out, her voice trembling but firm. She crouched down beside Shadow, wrapping her arms around him. "He's part of our family now. You can't take him away." The officer exchanged a glance with Dr. Patterson before nodding. "We're not taking him, I promise. But we'll need your cooperation. If Shadow was part of this network, he might help us uncover more about their operations." As the officers began documenting Shadow's marking, Mrs. Thompson pulled Lily aside, crouching to her level. "Honey," she said softly, "we don't know what Shadow's been through, but if there's a way to help stop these people, don't you think he'd want to help?" Lily looked at her mother, her eyes filled with tears. "He's already been through enough," she whispered. "Why can't we just let him be safe now?" Mrs. Thompson hugged her daughter tightly, her own heart aching. "Maybe this is how he can find peace," she said, "by helping others just like we helped him." When the officers left, The family sat in silence, the weight of the day pressing down on them. Shadow, as always, stayed close to Lily, his body a calm, steady presence in the room. "Do you think he remembers it?" Lily asked quietly, stroking Shadow's head. "What they made him do?" Mr. Thompson sighed. "We don't know, but if he does, he's stronger than we'll ever understand." That night, as Lily lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about the mark on Shadow's belly and the story it told. He wasn't just a dog, he was a survivor. Whatever horrors he had faced, he had endured them and found his way to her. Shadow lay at the foot of her bed, his eyes glowing faintly in the moonlight. For the first time, Lily noticed the way he seemed to carry himself, not with fear, but with purpose. He wasn't broken. He was waiting. For what, she didn't know. But she was determined to find out. Shadow was more than her dog now. He was a mystery, a piece of a larger story that was only just beginning to unfold. The day after their visit to the vet, the Thompson family sat anxiously in their living room as two police officers returned to share what they had uncovered about Shadow. Shadow lay at Lily's feet, his amber eyes fixed on the officers, calm yet vigilant. The air was thick with anticipation, and even Shadow seemed to sense that something important was about to be revealed. The taller officer, Officer Grant, began. "Shadow's story is unlike anything we've come across before," he said, his tone heavy. "What we're about to share might be difficult to hear." The officer explained that Shadow's breed, the Xoloitzcuintli, was one of the oldest and rarest dog breeds in the world. Revered in ancient Mexican culture as spiritual guardians, they were now sought after for their uniqueness and value, often fetching high prices on the black market. "These dogs are rare and intelligent," Officer Grant continued. "That makes them a prime target for smugglers. Shadow's markings indicate he was part of an illegal trafficking operation. These operations don't just capture rare animals, they exploit them." Mrs. Thompson gasped softly, her hand instinctively covering her mouth. "Exploit them how?" she asked. The second officer, a younger woman named Officer Mills, spoke gently. "Smugglers often use dogs like Shadow for tasks that no living creature should endure. They're trained to carry contraband, navigate dangerous terrain, and even act as bait for other illegal activities. It's a cruel, heartless system." The words hung in the air, and Lily's hand tightened on Shadow's back. He had to do all of that?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Officer Mills nodded. "From what we can gather, Shadow was likely taken as a puppy. Dogs like him are broken down and rebuilt into tools. They're taught to follow commands without hesitation, no matter how dangerous. Many don't survive." The officers paused, giving the family a moment to process the weight of what they were hearing. Shadow, as if sensing their distress, pressed closer to Lily, his warmth a silent comfort. "Then how did he escape?" Mr. Thompson asked, his voice steady but filled with concern. "We don't know all the details," Officer Grant admitted, "but what we do know is that Shadow's story is rare. Most dogs in his position never find freedom. The fact that he escaped and ended up in a shelter means he's incredibly resourceful. He didn't just survive, he found a way out." Lily looked down at Shadow, her tears spilling over. "You're so brave," she whispered, stroking his head. Shadow didn't move, but his eyes met hers with an intensity that seemed to acknowledge her words. The officers explained that Shadow had likely been on the run for some time before he was found by a rescue team. Malnourished and exhausted, he had been brought to the shelter where the Thompsons later found him. His calm demeanor and quiet strength were likely the result of years of training combined with an instinct for survival. Officer Mills added, "Dogs like Shadow don't forget what they've been through. His behavior, his vigilance, his protectiveness, those are remnants of his past. He was trained to protect something, to be aware of everything around him. And now, he's using those instincts to protect you." The room fell silent as the family absorbed the enormity of Shadow's journey. For years, he had endured hardship, danger, and exploitation. Yet somehow he had escaped, survived, and found his way to them. "Why didn't anyone look for him?" Mrs. Thompson asked quietly. "Why didn't anyone try to help him before?" "Because animals like Shadow aren't meant to be found," Officer Grant said grimly. "The people who run these operations go to great lengths to cover their tracks. Shadow is lucky. Most aren't." Lily knelt beside Shadow, wrapping her arms around him. "You're safe now," she said softly, her voice breaking. "I promise. You're safe." Shadow, as if understanding her words, leaned into her embrace, his amber eyes softening. For the first time, he seemed to relax, his body losing some of the tension it had carried since the day they brought him home. Mr. Thompson cleared his throat, his gaze fixed on the officers. "What happens next? Is he in danger because of this?" Officer Mills shook her head. "Not anymore. As long as he's with you, he's safe. But we'll keep you updated if we uncover anything more about his past or the operation he was part of." That night, the family sat together in the living room, Shadow curled up at Lily's feet. The glow of the fireplace bathed the room in warmth, but the weight of Shadow's past lingered in their minds. "He's been through so much," Mrs. Thompson murmured, her voice barely audible. "And yet he still found his way to us," Mr. Thompson replied. "That says something about him, and about us." Lily stroked Shadow's sleek back, her fingers tracing the faint scar on his side. "He's a survivor," she said, her voice filled with quiet determination. "And now he's family." As the fire crackled and the house grew quiet, Shadow lay his head on his paws, his eyes half closed. For the first time in what must have been years, he seemed at peace. But deep within those amber eyes was a world of memories, a past he could never fully leave behind, yet one he was determined to overcome. Little did the Thompsons know, Shadow's past would not only define him, but also shape the trials and triumphs they would soon face together. The secrets of his life were still unfolding, and the journey they had begun with him was far from over. The day after learning about Shadow's past, the Thompson family received an unexpected call from Officer Grant. The tone of his voice carried a sense of urgency that made Mr. Thompson grip the phone tighter. "We've identified a possible location linked to Shadow's marking," Officer Grant explained. "It's an abandoned warehouse just outside of town. We believe it's being used to hold rare animals before they're moved to other locations. We need your help." "Our help?" Mr. Thompson asked, glancing at Shadow, who was lying quietly at Lily's feet, ever watchful. "Yes," Officer Grant confirmed. "Shadow's instincts and training might be the key to finding the animals and navigating the warehouse safely, but we'd only proceed with your consent." The family gathered in the living room, and the weight of the decision hung in the air. Mrs. Thompson looked apprehensive, her hands clutching her teacup. "Is it safe?" she asked, her voice wavering. Officer Grant assured them that Shadow would not be placed in harm's way. "But his unique skills could make all the difference," he said. "We'll have him on a leash, and we'll follow his lead." Later that afternoon, the family arrived at the police station, Shadow walking confidently beside Lily. His calm demeanor was unshaken, as though he understood the importance of what was about to happen. Officer Grant and Officer Mills briefed the Thompsons on the plan. Shadow would lead a team to the warehouse, following his instincts to locate the animals. The police would handle the operation, ensuring everyone's safety. As they prepared to leave, Lily knelt beside Shadow, looking into his amber eyes. "You can do this," she whispered, stroking his head. "You're a hero, Shadow." Shadow nudged her hand gently, his quiet strength reassuring her. The warehouse stood on the outskirts of town, its rusted metal exterior blending into the surrounding industrial area. The air was thick with tension as the team approached. Shadow sniffed the ground, his posture alert but calm. His ears twitched at every sound, his body moving with purpose. "He knows something," Officer Mills murmured, watching Shadow lead them toward the side entrance of the warehouse. Inside, the atmosphere shifted. The air was damp and heavy, filled with the faint sounds of whimpers and rustling. Shadow froze momentarily, his nose pointed toward a stack of crates. He barked once, sharp and precise, then looked back at Lily and the officers as if urging them to act. "That's it," Officer Grant said, signaling his team. "Let's move." The team split up, securing the perimeter and inspecting the crates. Shadow remained focused, his every move deliberate. He led them to a locked room in the back of the warehouse, his growls low and menacing as he stood at the door. One of the officers worked quickly to pick the lock. As the door swung open, the sight inside took everyone's breath away. Cages lined the walls, each holding animals of various shapes and sizes. Birds with vibrant feathers, small exotic mammals, and even a few rare reptiles. The air was filled with their frightened cries. "Unbelievable," Officer Mills whispered. "This is worse than we thought." Shadow stepped forward, his nose pressed against one of the cages, holding a trembling fawn. He let out a soft whine, his amber eyes filled with an emotion that seemed almost like empathy. As the officers worked to free the animals, a sudden noise echoed through the warehouse, a metallic clang followed by hurried footsteps. Shadow's ears shot up, and without hesitation, he darted toward the source of the sound, tugging Lily along with him. "Shadow, wait!" Lily called, her heart pounding as she ran to keep up. Rounding a corner, they found a man dressed in dark clothing, attempting to flee through a side door. Shadow let out a fierce bark, stopping the man in his tracks. The sight of the sleek, black dog with its glowing amber eyes froze him in fear. Before he could react, Officer Grant and another officer arrived, apprehending the man. "Good boy, Shadow," Grant said, giving him a quick pat, before turning his attention to the suspect. The operation continued smoothly, with all the animals safely removed from the warehouse. Shadow's keen senses and calm demeanor had been instrumental in the success of the raid, earning him the admiration of everyone involved. As they watched the last of the cages being loaded into rescue vehicles, Mrs. Thompson placed a hand on Mr. Thompson's arm. "He's extraordinary," she said, her voice filled with awe. "He's more than extraordinary," Mr. Thompson replied. "He's a miracle." That evening, as they returned home, the family felt a deep sense of pride and gratitude for Shadow. Lily sat beside him in the back seat, her hand resting on his sleek back. "You did it," she said softly, her voice filled with admiration. "You saved them." Shadow turned his head to look at her, his amber eyes calm and steady. For a moment it felt as though he understood every word she said. Back at home, the family settled into the living room, the weight of the day still heavy but tempered by relief. Shadow lay at Lily's feet, his body relaxed for the first time in hours. Mrs. Thompson handed Lily a warm cup of cocoa and sat beside her. "I think today proved something," she said gently. "Shadow isn't just part of our family. He's part of something much bigger." Lily nodded, stroking Shadow's head. "He's a hero," she said simply, "and he's ours." As the fire crackled in the hearth, Shadow closed his eyes, his body finally at peace. The warehouse was behind him now, and for the first time, his past felt like just that, a memory. What lay ahead, however, was a future filled with purpose, love, and the unwavering bond he shared with the family who had given him a second chance. The days following the warehouse raid were marked by a strange mixture of relief and unease. Shadow had proven himself to be a hero, yet the scars of his past lingered, etched not just on his sleek body, but in his quiet, watchful eyes. Though he seemed to relax at home, there were moments when a noise or a sudden movement would make his body tense, his amber eyes darting as though searching for danger. Lily noticed it first. One evening, while she was reading by the fireplace, Shadow, who had been lying peacefully at her feet, suddenly jumped up at the faint sound of a door creaking. His body stiffened, and a low growl rumbled in his throat until Lily placed a gentle hand on his back. "It's okay, Shadow," she whispered. "You're safe now." But Shadow's tense posture didn't ease for several minutes. Lily's heart ached as she watched him. No matter how safe he was, his past seemed to cling to him, like an invisible weight he couldn't shake. The next morning, Lily approached her parents. "We need to help him," she said firmly. "He's been through so much, and he deserves to be happy." Mrs. Thompson reached across the table to squeeze her daughter's hand. "We will, sweetheart. We just need to figure out how." After some research, the family decided to enlist the help of a professional dog trainer who specialized in working with rescue animals. The trainer, a gentle man named Paul, arrived a few days later, his calm demeanor immediately putting both the family and Shadow at ease. "Shadow's been through a lot," Paul observed as he watched the dog pace near the window. "He's incredibly intelligent, but that also means he remembers everything he's experienced. The key is to show him that his world has changed, that he doesn't have to carry the weight of his past anymore." Paul's training sessions were as much for the family as they were for Shadow. He taught them how to recognize the signs of Shadow's anxiety and how to redirect his focus with positive reinforcement. Lily threw herself into the training, her patience and determination evident in every session. One day, as they practiced basic commands in the backyard, Paul introduced a new exercise, trust building. He had Lily stand a few feet away from Shadow and call his name softly, her hand extended. At first, Shadow hesitated, his amber eyes flicking between Lily and the open space around them, as if unsure whether it was truly safe. "It's okay, Shadow," Lily said, her voice steady. "I'm here." Slowly, Shadow took a step forward, then another, until his nose nudged her hand. Lily beamed, tears welling in her eyes as she knelt to hug him. "You did it," she whispered, stroking his sleek head. "You're so brave." The progress was slow but steady. Over the weeks, Shadow began to show signs of change. His body no longer tensed at every creak of the house, and he started to relax in spaces that had once made him anxious. Lily noticed that he would lie closer to her now, sometimes even resting his head on her lap, a gesture of trust that filled her heart with joy. One evening, as the family sat together in the living room, Shadow did something he had never done before. He climbed onto the couch beside Lily and curled up, his head resting against her side. The Thompsons exchanged glances, their smiles reflecting the quiet triumph of the moment. "He's starting to believe he's home," Mrs. Thompson said softly, her voice thick with emotion. But the journey wasn't without its setbacks. There were days when a sudden noise or an unfamiliar face would send Shadow retreating to his bed, his body rigid with tension. On those days, Lily would sit beside him, her voice soothing as she spoke to him about anything and everything. "You're safe now, Shadow," she would say, her fingers running gently along his back. "No one's ever going to hurt you again." Her words became a mantra, not just for Shadow, but for herself. She felt a deep sense of responsibility for him, as though her love could somehow erase the pain of his past. Through it all, Shadow's resilience became a source of inspiration for the family. "He's teaching us more than we're teaching him," Mr. Thompson remarked one evening as he watched Shadow retrieve a toy Lily had thrown. "He's a reminder that healing takes time, but it's always possible." Mrs. Thompson nodded. "And that love, real unconditional love, can make all the difference." Months passed, and the transformation in Shadow was undeniable. He began to play more, his movements no longer cautious but full of energy. He greeted the family with wagging tails and even occasional barks, his once quiet demeanor giving way to moments of joy. One afternoon, as Lily played fetch with Shadow in the backyard, she paused to watch him chase after the ball. The sun glinted off his sleek, black body, and his amber eyes sparkled with a light she hadn't seen before. "You're happy, aren't you?" she called to him, as he trotted back with the ball in his mouth. Shadow dropped it at her feet, his tail wagging, and looked up at her with an expression that seemed to say, "Yes, I am." That evening, as Shadow lay by the fireplace, his eyes half closed in contentment, the family reflected on how far he had come. "He's not just a dog," Mrs. Thompson said, her voice filled with reverence. "He's a symbol of resilience." "And love," Mr. Thompson added. "He's shown us what it means to truly care for someone, scars and all." Lily looked down at Shadow, her hand resting gently on his head. "He's family," she said simply. As the fire crackled and the night deepened, Shadow slept peacefully, his body relaxed and his dreams untroubled. The journey to healing wasn't over, but the worst was behind him. With the Thompsons by his side, Shadow had found not just a home, but a haven, a place where love and patience had the power to mend even the deepest wounds. The transformation in Shadow was nothing short of remarkable. Months of love, patience, and dedication had softened the edges of his wary demeanor. Gone was the tense, watchful dog who had flinched at the slightest sound. In his place stood a confident, playful companion who greeted the Thompsons every morning with wagging tails and bright amber eyes. Shadow had finally become what he was always meant to be, a happy, carefree dog who felt truly safe for the first time in his life. One sunny afternoon, as the family relaxed in the backyard, Lily noticed a flyer pinned to their community board. It was from a local animal rescue organization asking for volunteers to help with a campaign raising awareness about illegal animal trafficking. Lily's eyes lit up as she showed the flyer to her parents. "Can we help?" she asked eagerly. "Shadow's story could make a difference." Mrs. Thompson looked at the flyer, then at Shadow, who lay peacefully at Lily's feet. "I think it's a wonderful idea," she said with a smile. "We've seen firsthand what these animals go through. Maybe we can help stop it from happening to others." The Thompsons reached out to the organization, sharing Shadow's journey from victim to survivor. The story captivated the community, and soon Shadow became the face of the campaign. Posters and videos featured his piercing amber eyes and sleek black form, accompanied by the message, "Every animal deserves a second chance." At one of the events, a volunteer approached the family with a small, squirming puppy in her arms. "This little one was rescued from the same operation as Shadow," she explained. "We're looking for a forever home." Lily's heart melted at the sight of the puppy, a scruffy little golden retriever mix with floppy ears and a mischievous glint in its eyes. She crouched down to let the puppy sniff her hand, and within moments it was climbing into her lap, wagging its tiny tail. Shadow watched the interaction from a distance, his head tilted slightly. Then, as if giving his silent approval, he trotted over and gently nuzzled the puppy. The decision was unanimous. "Welcome to the family," Lily whispered to the puppy, stroking its soft fur. They decided to name him Buddy, a fitting name for Shadow's new companion. With Buddy by his side, Shadow seemed to come alive in new ways. The two dogs became inseparable, chasing each other through the yard, exploring the woods behind the house, and curling up together by the fireplace at night. Buddy's playful energy balanced Shadow's calm, steady presence, and the two formed a bond that brought even more joy to the Thompsons' lives. The family continued to support the animal rescue campaign, attending events and sharing Shadow's story wherever they could. Lily often spoke at these events, her voice filled with passion, as she described how Shadow had changed their lives. "He taught us that love can heal even the deepest wounds," she would say, her hand resting on Shadow's back. "And he showed us that every animal deserves a chance to be loved and to feel safe." One crisp autumn morning, Lily and Shadow sat together on the front porch. The golden sunlight bathed the yard, highlighting the vibrant reds and yellows of the falling leaves. Shadow lay stretched out on the wooden planks, his eyes half closed in contentment. Beside him, Buddy dozed in a patch of sunlight, his small chest rising and falling with each breath. Lily ran her fingers gently along Shadow's sleek back, her touch light and affectionate. "You've come so far," she murmured. "You're not just a dog, Shadow. You're family." Shadow opened one eye, his gaze meeting hers with an expression that seemed to convey understanding. He leaned into her touch, a soft sigh escaping him as he settled deeper into his comfortable spot. Mrs. Thompson stepped out onto the porch, a tray of lemonade and cookies in her hands. "I think Shadow's found his happy ending," she said, her voice warm with pride. Mr. Thompson followed, carrying a blanket that he draped over Lily's shoulders. "Not just his," he added. "Ours too. He didn't just heal, he helped us heal too." As the family sat together on the porch, watching the dogs play in the yard, a sense of peace settled over them. Shadow's journey had not been easy, but it had brought them closer as a family and given them a renewed sense of purpose. For Shadow, the porch was more than just a resting place. It was a symbol of everything he had gained: safety, love, and a family that cherished him for who he was. The scars of his past were still there, faint but present, yet they no longer defined him. What defined him now was the life he had built with the Thompsons, filled with joy, trust, and unconditional love. The story of Shadow and his family didn't just end, it became a legacy. Through their efforts, more animals were rescued, more people became aware, and more second chances were given. But for the Thompsons, it was simpler than that. They had found Shadow, and in doing so, they had found something far greater: hope, resilience, and the profound bond that only a dog and his family can share. Under the warm autumn sun, Shadow closed his eyes, surrounded by the family who had given him a new beginning. His journey had come full circle, and for the first time in his life, he was truly home. Shadow's journey is a powerful testament that even the most wounded beings can find light and love. His story reminds us of the incredible resilience within every living creature and the profound impact that compassion and kindness can have. Shadow didn't just heal. He taught us the importance of protecting and cherishing the vulnerable lives around us. May God bless you and your loved ones, granting you the strength to love, to heal, and to extend kindness to those who need it most. If Shadow's story has touched your heart, please share it with others. Together, we can spread hope and love, inspiring a world where every creature has the chance to feel safe and loved. Thank you for being part of this journey. Your voice can make a difference.